Everyone. Thank you for inviting me to come here today to talk to you a little bit about the Writing Center and how the Writing Center can help you in your first sort of days and weeks and months at Trinity. I'll also talk to you a little bit about the experiences of international students sometimes as they come to campuses in the United States, some fears, some concerns, and a few things that typically maybe present problems at first. And so the first thing I want to say is there is help all around you. So in your first year, you are going to be in the first year experience course. Your first year experience instructors are really excited and can't wait to help you acclimate to campus. So the first thing you should do if you feel you're feeling a little lost or you feel like you don't have the tools to approach those first writing assignments, go to your professors, go to their office hours. They're really excited to help you figure out your writing assignments. Every first year student at Trinity is making a huge transition right now, right? From high school to college writing. And so every first year student is making that transition. And so you're not alone. The second thing I want to say is that the Writing Center is available to you as a resource. And so some of you may be familiar with writing centers. Maybe some of you had writing centers at your high schools or wherever you were before coming to Trinity. But for some of you, the idea of a writing center might be new. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what it is. In non-COVID times, the Writing Center is a physical spot on campus. It's actually in the library by Starbucks in the Tiger Learning Commons. And so normally you can come to a physical place and meet with a tutor. But for now, the Writing Center is available online. And we have a staff of about 8 or 9 undergraduate peer tutors who have been trained to help all students from brainstorming to drafting to revising to proofreading, any student for any writing assignment at any stage of the process. So you can come if you are having trouble understanding a prompt, if you are having trouble coming up with an idea, if your professor's giving you long, lengthy instructions and you're still not really sure if you quite grasp what it is you're supposed to do. If you are writing the paper and you'd like some help coming up with ideas, outlining, drafting, right? Maybe you finished the paper or you think you finished it and you just want somebody to look it over for flow, organization, proofreading, etc. A lot of times international students will like to sort of go over papers, not only for sort of the big ideas, but for practice, right? Practice in accommodating the language, right? So really anything that's related to any writing assignment that you have, our peer tutors are here to help you. And so I want to encourage you to come to the Writing Center for any and all assignments. Unlike at some places where you have to pay for tutoring, the Writing Center is free and unlimited to all students. So you can come as much as you want. There's no fee associated with the Writing Center or anything. We're a free service, much like the Quantitative Reasoning and Skills Center offers you free unlimited tutoring in all of your math or quantitative courses. Like I said, right now we're online, but hopefully in the spring, we'll have online and in-person options. I wanted to begin by just demonstrating how to access the Writing Center so that you're really clear about how to go about making the appointments. So I'm going to share my screen. And I'm hoping that as I'm sharing, the Writing Center is coming up. So you would get to the Writing Center either by typing Writing Center at Trinity University into Google, or you can go to gotu.us/Writing Center, and it will take you to this page, which I'm hoping is showing up on your screen right now. Typically our information is in this, the main part of the screen, but for now, the information that you will need to access is on this COVID-19 updates page, which I'm gonna click now. All right, I am going to reshare so that I make sure that the right information is on the screen in front of you. So I'm just going to walk you through this before I get to my the other part of my discussion. So we have 3 options for the Writing Center in the fall 2020. As you see in the first paragraph up here, you can schedule a Zoom appointment to meet with any one of our writing consultants. And I'll show you that in just a moment. If you want to kind of get to know the writing consultants before you choose one to go see, we have a Meet the Tutors page. And if you click on that, you can read a short bio of all of the tutors. Some will let you know what subjects they are best in, what major they are. So you can sort of say, well, I'm pre-med, I might go to this, this tutor that's also pre-med, and she can kind of give me advice in that way. We also have the possibility for you to submit a paper for written feedback, meaning it's asynchronous. You're not going to meet with the tutor face-to-face. There is a Google form, and you'll submit your paper through the form, and a tutor will read it and send the paper back to you, usually within a 24-hour period. There's no face-to-face in that way. We recognize that some of you are probably Zoom fatigued, right? You're on Zoom all day for classes, and some of you who are coming from or are still out of the country, right? Your time is maybe not going to work out with our normal tutoring hours. We also have a drop-in Zoom room from 6:30 to 8:30 Sunday through Thursday. And you'll see the information here. The Zoom link is available. This is a room you can hop onto to get quick feedback. If you're having trouble scheduling an appointment, you can come to the Zoom room and a tutor will help you. You can also come ask quick questions about citations. So we'll talk about citations in a moment, but maybe quick questions, a quick grammar question, or help reading over a prompt before you get started. We also have seen a lot of students come to that Zoom room when they're brainstorming, right? So maybe you're stuck and you need to just talk with a tutor to get unstuck. Maybe the tutor can help you think through some questions that can help you get started writing. We also have an Instagram, which I love because it is in the voice of our tutors. It's at TU Writing Center, and you'll be reminded through almost daily updates that we're here, we exist, and we're available for you. At the bottom of this page, you can also see my email address, and you are welcome to email me if all of those other things, something fails with all of those things. You can feel free to email me and I can help you out. Just back up here to the Zoom appointment, I'm going to stop share again just so that I can show you what it looks like. You'll just have to log in your single sign-on, which is your Trinity, the same way you would get to Tiger Paws to T-Learn. You're going to just put in those credentials and log in, and you'll be able to search for appointment times and sign up. Okay, so now what I want to do is I'm going to talk to you again about some challenges that international students sometimes face when they come to a college campus in the US, right? There are certain differences in writing styles depending on where you're from, and there are different conventions. And sometimes as a first-year student, not only are you transitioning to college, but you're also transitioning to a new culture and a new way of thinking about writing. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about what your professors are going to expect from your papers, and just sort of give you some language to think about some of the obstacles that you might be feeling or facing right now. So I am going to share, once my mouse works here, I'm going to share the screen. And I am going to just share like this with in the slideshow draft view, so I can make sure that the slides are advancing. Before I start, I wanted to tell you that one of the most valuable resources available to international students, in particular students who are speaking English as a second or third language, the most valuable resource is the online writing lab at Purdue University. On this slideshow, I've linked two of my favorite portals to that website. My favorite is at the bottom there. It's an introduction to sort of the basics of writing in North American colleges. And through those two links, you can get access to a wealth of resources, whether it's questions about grammar, about how to read a prompt, how to use reasoning, right? How to be direct, how to craft a thesis. All this, the information is vast on these websites. And this is, I think, is a really good place to just bookmark and continue to go back to, especially if you're sort of a self-teacher and you're sort of motivated to learn more about writing, particularly in the context of a North American college. I think that these resources are outstanding. So I want to get started by talking about what your professors are going to expect. So the first thing I want to say is that sometimes when international students come to the Writing Center or I talk to them, one of the things that may be different between the way writing is taught here and the way you may have learned how to construct a paper where you're from is that typically papers in the American Academy are going to be linear. So you're going to have your argument, your thesis statement, your introductory paragraph right up front. It's very unusual, especially in the early years of your college experience, that you'll have a paper where you'll wait to make the main argument. Your professors are going to be expecting that argument right up front, okay? And then everything after that main argument right up front is going to elaborate upon that main argument. And they're going to be logical transitions from point to point, from paragraph to paragraph. All right. And then they're going to be expecting that your conclusion, right, will reinforce what you've argued up front and answer this question. You'll hear this all the time from your professors. So what, right? Why should we care about the argument that you are making? So with those very first papers that you're going to turn in, your professor's going to expect a real strong argument right up front. And then by the end of the paper, that you've told us not only what your argument is, but why we should care about that argument. All right. So maybe your argument is the temperature is rising, right? The global temperature is rising. Well, somewhere in that paper, you're also going to have to convince me that that matters, right? So you'll hear these terms all the time: your thesis, your main claim, and the so what question, right? Why should we care? So that's a good question to actually ask at office hours, right? Did I answer the so what question here? You've probably, Okay, the next thing that your professors will expect in terms of the academic writing that you're doing here in college is a certain level of formality. Now, that doesn't mean using big words, right? But that means that instead of focusing on personal feelings and personal beliefs, you're going to focus more on evidence. All right, so academic writing in the American Academy is meant to be objective and rational, meaning that you are supposed to weigh both sides of an issue, right, and come down on one or the other, right? We try to avoid statements like, this is absolutely true, right? Rather, we'll say, well, there's all of this evidence. This seems to be stronger, right? Not this is the only way to think about it, but this seems to be stronger, right? So this arguments are based on evidence and analysis, right? Writers should avoid expressing personal feelings. It also means that you shouldn't claim your argument is the only way to think about something. So in the American Academy, your professors are going to value rational discussion that admits that there are sort of counterclaims and other ways of thinking. You're also going to be expected, probably very early on, to do papers involving research and citing source material. Sometimes international students have done many of these papers, but we've had also a lot of international students come to the Writing Center who have never written a research paper. I have a quote on the screen right now from a student. This was in an article from US News. There's a student from Serbia who said, I had a real problem with research papers, right? When I first came to college in the US, I was not familiar with research papers, right? I was not familiar with the structure of a paper, with citations, with source materials. And I would say that this may be how you're feeling right now. You may have already got an assignment, right, for a research paper. Remember, all first-year students are coming to college really probably not having done a really major research paper at the level that's expected. So be sure if you're getting a research paper that's requiring a lot of source material that you're asking your professors about their expectations. You're coming to the Writing Center saying, can you tell me, right, what are the expectations for a research paper? I haven't done one. What are some tips? Right? So being careful to express if you are unfamiliar with a research paper is the best first step, because then you can get somebody to help you walk you through the process, right? Everybody is here to help you learn how to do these things. So that may not describe you, but we have had students in the past who really never had done a research paper. Research and gathering sources is going to be really important to your professors in college. Likewise, because you will be expected to cite sources, you're going to hear a lot of talk about citation styles. APA, MLA, Chicago, right? Now, if you're not familiar with any of those, they sound really confusing when you hear them in class, right? The professor might say, it better be an MLA format or you're going to get points off. And so if you're not familiar with those types of citation styles, it can be confusing and unsettling, right? What are they? All these citation styles mean is it's a certain way in which you cite sources within a document. So in MLA style, for example, when you quote an author, you just take the author's name and the page number and you include it in the text, and you also put it at the end of a paper in a work cited. Other styles use footnotes, stuff like that. Each paper, each professor will ask for your paper to be done in a particular style. Rather than get confused or exasperated, just take a look at what that style is. Again, I'm going to send you right to the Purdue Online Writing Lab. All of these things are going to be online, but writing tutors can help you with these formats, your professors, your peer tutors. It really isn't a cause for concern. It's just a matter of, okay, in MLA, I put my name up in the left-hand corner and I put page numbers in the right-hand corner. And they're just basically a set of rules you have to follow. Okay. The next thing I want to talk about is that your professors, and I'm sure they've all said this already, your professors are going to expect papers to reflect original critical thinking, right? And that word original, and this is of all students, right? That word original really, it can be scary, right? Because you feel like I've read all of these amazing sources from these amazing scholars. How could I possibly put my own voice in there and it be original? What do I know about climate change, right? I haven't gone out and done that research. And that word original, we see a lot of students in the Writing Center who feel a lot of anxiety about having to come up with original ideas, right? And I want to assure you that this is a struggle for everyone, right? Trying to come up with an interpretation that you feel is fresh and personal, and you will develop this skill over the course of your 4 years. But really, another way to think about it is your professors are just mainly wanting you to read your sources, right? And make connections between those sources that maybe nobody else has made, right? So they may ask questions like, so they might talk like, you know, I'm looking to get an A, you must have an original thesis, right? You must have something that approaches a topic from a new direction. And that sounds sort of difficult, but often it really just means, look, I'm giving you these 3 sources. What I want you to do is find connections between them that didn't maybe exist before, or apply these ideas to something that we didn't talk about in class, right? Make an observation that we haven't talked about yet as a class or in lecture, right? So I would sort of encourage you to don't let that word original scare you, right? Know, right, that coming up with sort of original, unique ideas is something that all writers struggle with, and certainly is a learning process over 4 years. The other thing I wanted to talk about here is that you'll also hear the term original in the context of plagiarism, right? Because your instructor probably talks about writing in your own words, right? You hear them talk a lot, again, about the style, the MLA, the APA, in-text citations. You have to have those citations. You have to have that bibliography. You have to have those endnotes and that works cited page, right? You'll hear them talking about paraphrasing, quoting, summarizing, the difference between quoting and paraphrasing. When do you need to cite? You'll hear them talking in this language, right? And it can be a little bit nerve-wracking because you think, I hope I'm not doing something wrong, right? I want to make sure that I am giving credit to the author, right? Because my professor seems to be putting a lot of emphasis on this. You may have signed the honor code, right, in which you pledge to not plagiarize, but you still have questions about what constitutes plagiarism in the first place. And you're not alone. And again, this is going to be a learning process. So I wanted to talk a little bit about how you can address plagiarism in your own papers and give you some tips to avoid it. So the first thing to think about is the term cite or citation, which means giving an author credit for his or her own words and thoughts. Sometimes this is going to be in text. Sometimes it's going to be footnotes and endnotes. Sometimes it means putting in a signal phrase. As he argues in this book, Malcolm Gladwell believes that, right? So it's putting the author in the sentence. Whether you are quoting directly, meaning taking words from a source and putting quotations around those words, or paraphrasing, which is taking the words but putting them sort of into your own voice, in either case, you need a citation. All right, so when your professors are talking about quoting, paraphrasing, citations, they're saying anytime you take the words of another, whether they're the exact words or a sort of paraphrased version, you must provide the citation so that the reader of the paper knows who should get credit for that thought. Okay, so that's sort of the language. I wanted to briefly talk about something called patchwriting, which you may have heard about. And patchwriting is a phrase that refers to, it's a type of paraphrasing. So if you take words from a source, right, and you just maybe change the tense of the verbs, or you use a thesaurus and you just change the words to synonyms, right? But maybe you keep them in the same order as the original, just change the tense and maybe provide a synonym. Maybe you keep the same words but change the order. Maybe you do a little bit of both, but in any event, it's still very much a copy of the original, right? The idea of the original and even maybe some piece of the sentence structure is still the original. Some people think that patchwriting is a way to avoid plagiarism. But really, if you're just patching things up, you still want to be sure to cite, right, the author. Provide an in-text citation or a signal phrase, or put that author into the work cited, right? You need, even if you're changing the words and changing the language, you still want to provide a citation. There's almost never a reason why providing a citation would be a bad thing. In fact, you want to sort of probably oversight just to make sure that you're not getting into a gray area of, did you take those person's words or not? Couple of really good tips to avoid any type of plagiarism situation. As you're reading source materials, instead of quoting the authors directly or cut and pasting from websites, try to take your own handwritten notes or take notes like on the computer. And as you do, put the source material already into your own words, right? So that when you go back to use those sources, you've already, right, shaped them differently than they were shaped in the original. You'll still have to cite the idea, right? But at least you won't run into the problem of forgetting that you took something verbatim from one text. When you're writing your paper, you use those notes. When you quote directly or say something in almost the same language, like we said, provide a citation. And if you're ever in doubt, use office hours. So if you are not sure whether something might constitute plagiarism, take it to the writing center, take it to your peer tutor, take it to your professor. That's the best way to protect yourself for against any mistakes. Right? Most plagiarism doesn't happen maybe intentionally, right? It happens accidentally. And so if you're sort of serious about avoiding plagiarism, take any questions to the professor before turning in the paper, and then you will know, right? You'll be able to have that conversation. Another really good tip, and I tell my students this, avoid really lengthy quotes. So if you have a source, right, and it's like a long academic article, avoid taking like 5, 6, 7, 8 lines from the article and putting it into your paper, right? You should limit these sort of long quotes, because the more you use them, the more your paper becomes in the voice of the author, right? So avoid really lengthy quotations. Try to put most of the ideas into your own language. That will get you closer to that original voice that your professor will talk about. So I just wanted to give you some ideas of questions you might ask your professor or peer tutor. You could ask, do I do a good job of weaving source material into the paper, right? Is it mostly my voice? Right? Or is it mostly the source's voice? Do I do a good job of that? Can you talk to me about that? You might also ask, do I have a good balance of summary, paraphrase, and direct quotation? Your peer tutor might say, you have too many quotations, right? We need to incorporate other types of sources. You could also ask, do I choose appropriate times to use direct quotes? Do I overuse direct quotes? Are my quotes too long? am I failing to make an original argument in the paper, right? And that's going to be a good question to ask, especially in your first semester here, right? Can you see where in the paper I'm contributing my own voice to the discussion, right? If you think of yourselves at a dinner table and all of the other chairs are the sources that you're using, right? You should see yourself as having a conversation, right? And rather than describing the conversation that everybody else is having, you want to make sure that you're at the table too, right? And you're speaking pretty loudly, right? You want to be in that paper, your own voice, your own ideas. And that doesn't mean you have to use I, right? It means that the majority of the ideas are you making observations about the source material. I want to say just lastly that another reason that international students sometimes come to the Writing Center is to practice in the English language, right? So that's another sort of hurdle that you're dealing with here. You're suddenly having to not only write college level essays, but to do so often in a second or third or fourth language, right? And that's hard, but also really admirable, right? So at the Writing Center, we love to just have conversations in English about papers, right? We can read papers out loud. In fact, that's a really good way to go about editing, is just to have somebody read the paper out loud and sort of hear sentences conversationally. We're happy to do that. You can do that also with a pair or a mentor. But the most common grammar and style errors that we tend to see are based on sentence structure, active versus passive voice, and subject-verb agreement. And these three categories of a sort of syntax error are common in all first-year papers, whether you're international students or not. So these are the three things that we tend to work on with students across the board in first-year writing. So earlier I mentioned that Purdue OWL website, where you can find information on just, you know, coming to school in a North American campus, but also you can get information on all of these grammatical issues. And I'm happy to point you to even more resources. There are many. So please feel free to get in touch with me. But if you want to go ahead and get started, I would encourage you to visit the Writing Center and set up an appointment. That's about all I have for you today. So again, I want to apologize that I can't be there in person or even live on Zoom, but I wish you all the best of luck as you transition to your first year at Trinity, and welcome, and I hope to meet all of you in person in the future. So please reach out and have a wonderful day.